All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely fascinating history behind the Catholic devotion to the most precious blood. It's a tradition that goes back literally thousands of years, but incredibly, it's completely interwoven with bandits ruling the Italian countryside, the fall of empires, and these massive sweeping missionary movements. So whether you are deeply familiar with this topic or just kind of curious about how ancient religious practices managed to survive into the modern day, we've got a truly captivating story to get into.
To make sense of all this, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. First, the modern context, then its ancient roots, followed by a post-revolution revival, and finally, modern prayers and devotions.
Okay, starting with part 1, the modern context. Now you might be wondering, why July? It's a great question. Why is this specific month set aside for a devotion focused so heavily on Eucharistic adoration and divine mercy? Well, the Church actually dedicates the entire month of July to the precious blood, and it's not just random. It stems from the traditional liturgical calendar where the Feast of the Precious Blood falls specifically on July 1st. It serves as this dedicated 31-day period for the faithful to really meditate on the concept that Christ's sacrifice is the ultimate price paid for the salvation of the world. Think about that for a second. Focusing on one single profound theme for an entire month, that can completely shift your daily perspective. It's a deeply immersive practice, both psychologically and spiritually.
And practically speaking, according to Catholic teaching, engaging in Eucharistic adoration is entirely synonymous with adoring the blood of Christ itself. When Catholics participate in adoration, looking at the consecrated host in the monstrance, they believe they are in the actual physical presence of the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. The sources make this super clear. Devotion to the Holy Eucharist is fundamentally devotion to the blood of Christ. You literally cannot separate the two.
Moving right along to part 2, ancient roots.
Get this. This text was written by Pope St. Clement I around 96 AD. That makes it one of the oldest Christian documents outside the Bible itself. The early church fathers heavily emphasized that the church was born right from the pierced side of Christ on the cross. So this quote shows us that right from the very beginning, fixing one's gaze on the precious blood wasn't a later invention. It was a central, foundational part of Christian identity from day one.
Building on that, we see some highly poetic, honestly hardcore language from the early church fathers. St. John Chrysostom, who is known for his incredible preaching, described the effect of receiving the Eucharist like lions breathing out fire. I mean, what an incredibly bold, vivid image. The ancient understanding wasn't just about some passive, quiet reflection. No, it was about being actively transformed and practically weaponized through this devotion to confidently face down evil in the world.
Fast forward over a millennium, and papal decrees formally institutionalized what those ancient fathers had been preaching all along. So you have this intense, fire-breathing devotion in the ancient world, and as the centuries roll on, the Church structures it. In 1849, Pope Pius IX makes it an official, universal feast day. But to really understand why it was formalized right at this specific moment in the 19th century, we have to look at the absolutely wild historical events happening on the ground in Italy.
Which brings us to part 3, a post-revolution revival.
Enter Saint Gaspar del Bufalo. Gaspar's life is basically an action movie. Right after he is ordained in 1808, the French Revolution and Napoleon's empire are completely upending the world. Gaspar straight up refuses to swear an oath of allegiance to Napoleon because of his loyalty to the Pope. As a result, he gets thrown into prison and exiled for 4 long years. But instead of breaking him, this imprisonment actually clarified his vision. When he finally gets back to Rome in 1814, the Pope tasks him with rebuilding a society that had been left in absolute chaos.
And I mean chaos. In post-Napoleonic Italy, civil authorities had lost total control. Bandits literally ruled the towns. The situation was so bad that the Pope was even threatening to exterminate them. But Gaspar took a wildly different, fearless route. With his newly founded Missionaries of the Precious Blood, he walked straight into the hills, directly into these dangerous bandit hideouts at night, armed with nothing but a crucifix. He preached the merits of the precious blood, this radical idea that absolutely no one, not even a hardened criminal, is beyond redemption.
It worked. Through his immense eloquence and relentless devotion, Gaspar created what a contemporary called a spiritual earthquake. He successfully reformed even the most hardened brigands. They actually laid their guns right at his feet. His approach was so successful, it angered corrupt civil officials who were secretly profiting from the banditry. Gaspar faced immense pushback from the government, and actually, even from some inside the church who thought his methods were way too untraditional. But he stuck with it, and he restored order to the Papal States through spiritual rather than military intervention.
And the legacy of Gaspar's revival didn't just stay in Europe, it eventually crossed the Atlantic. This led to the establishment of religious communities, shrines, and colleges all across America that still exist today. Led by Father Francis de Sales Brunner, these missionaries came to minister to German-speaking settlers in Ohio and Indiana. We're talking about guys who cleared land by hand, built mission houses from the ground up, and eventually founded institutions like St. Joseph's College. So a movement that started as a way to calm bandits in Italy actually became a foundational pillar of Catholicism in the American Midwest.
And finally, let's wrap up with Part 4, Modern Prayers and Devotions.
So what does this all look like in practice today? Well, one of the most prominent modern practices is the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, which believers use to pray for pardon and divine compassion. While the Divine Mercy devotion has its own distinct origin in the 20th century through St. Faustina, it is inextricably linked to the precious blood. According to her accounts, Jesus told St. Faustina that the blood and water flowing from his heart is a fount overflowing with an ocean of mercy for poor sinners.
The chaplet itself is incredibly accessible. It's structured using ordinary rosary beads to help believers deeply meditate on the Passion. You start off with your standard prayers, the Our Father, Hail Mary, and Apostles' Creed. But then, on the larger beads, you pray the Eternal Father, explicitly offering the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. And on the smaller beads, you plead for mercy, for the sake of his sorrowful passion. It creates this powerful rhythm of prayer that keeps the mind highly focused on the sacrifice.
But wait, there's more than just the Divine Mercy Chaplet. There is a remarkably rich tapestry of litanies, novenas, and historic hymns. Take the Litany of the Precious Blood, for instance, a powerful call and response prayer that was officially approved for public use by Pope John XXIII back in 1960. Or the specific Chaplet of the Precious Blood, where believers actually meditate on the 7 distinct times Christ shed his blood in the Gospels. The faithful also use these prayers to intercede for souls in purgatory, often singing ancient hymns penned by great minds like St. Thomas Aquinas.
So, we've seen how this devotion started with the early church fathers, survived the total collapse of empires, was quite literally weaponized for peace by St. Gaspar, and is now prayed daily across the globe. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. And it begs a fascinating question. In an increasingly secular modern world, what deeply rooted ancient traditions might rise up next to calm the chaos of our own times? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.